meeting. My name is Louis Hull. I'm chair of ISOC Quebec chapter. And I would like to right now welcome the remote participant. We have Jolie McPhee.
Yeah, Fatima Cambrero.
And who?
Fatima.
Fatima.
And Jean Gaines.
And Jean Gaines.
And we have three others who may wish to identify.
So,
Three others,
yeah, there's three.
You might want to invite them to introduce themselves.
Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
User 2, user 3, and user 5.
It is very unlikely, this is Alejandro Pisanty, it is very unlikely that the people who are in the call-in lines are able to type their names, because it's very likely that they only have telephone access and are not watching the WebEx, so they don't even know that you're asking them. So may I jump forward and ask the people who are in the call-ins by phone to identify themselves by voice, by stating their names?
Yes, hi, this is Ale. Can you hear me?
Can hear you and would like you to repeat.
Yes, this is Ale. Can you hear me?
Welcome, Alain. Yes, we hear you. Raquel? Raquel Gatto? Jerry Greenidge? Jean? Well. Okay, well, everybody, welcome. And I would like to now invite each and every one of you to present himself, saying his name and the name of his chapter. We want to make it short, please. So we'll start on my right, at the end of the table. Okay, great.
Boa noite, good evening in Portuguese. Cássio Vecchiati, ISOC Brazil.
Hi everybody, Oksana Pryhodko, ISOC Ukraine chapter information.
Grigory Sagyan, ISOC Armenia.
Hi, good evening. My name is Peter Koch. I'm with ISOC DE, the German chapter of the Internet Society.
Good evening. I'm Annalisa Roger with the San Francisco Bay ISOC chapter.
I'm the lucky guy who got Alisa to sit beside him. My name is Alejandro Pisanty from ISOC Mexico.
My name is Yao Viatun, ISOC Benin.
My name is Jim Galvin, ISOC Washington and ISOC Philadelphia.
Olivier Crépin-Leblond, ISOC UK England.
Alexei Sazonov, ISOC Russia Information.
Markus Kummer, ISOC staff.
Rudi Vansnick, ISOC Belgium, and Board of Trustees member.
I'm Walda Roseman, ISOC staff.
I'm Eva Frölich. I'm a member of the Swedish chapter, and I'm also the chair of the ISOC board.
I'm Ted Mooney. I'm a member of the Washington, D.C. chapter, and I'm ISOC staff.
Jacek Gajewski, ISOC staff, but also member of the Polish chapter.
Sophie Maddens, ISOC staff.
Sylvia Rudnik, ISOC Poland, self-delegated.
Glenn McKnight, ISOC Canada in the making.
Olga Cavalli, ISOC Argentina, and many thanks for the Canadian for hosting this meeting here.
Peter Knight, ISOC Washington, D.C. and Brazil. ISOC Brazil.
Cintra Sooknanan, ISOC Trinidad and Tobago.
Sivasubramanian, ISOC India, Chennai.
Wilson Atigava, ISOC Uganda.
Yrjö Länsipuro, ISOC Finland.
Victor Ndonnang, ISOC Cameroon chapter.
Eduardo Díaz, ISOC Puerto Rico.
Ana Ramos, ISOC Puerto Rico.
Lynn Sainamore. I'm going to break with tradition, and rather than just saying ISOC staff, I'm the ISOC CEO and president.
Ilkar Bayramova, NGL student and ISOC Azerbaijan chapter information.
Jordi Parraguirre, ISOC CAT, the Catalan chapter.
Tom Lowenhaupt, ISOC New York.
Monique Chartrand, ISOC Quebec.
Terrell Cowieson, ISOC Internet Leadership Team.
Dan York, Internet Society Deploy 360 program.
Francisco Vera, ISOC Global, because in Chile there's no local chapter yet.
Thanks. Augie Mitev, Colorado chapter.
Magali Pazello, ISOC Brazil.
Zaida Knight, the wife of Peter Knight, and a real Brazilian.
Amir Qayyum, ISOC Islamabad chapter information, Pakistan.
Lynn McNair, the Internet Society, Resource Development and Business Development.
Aziz Ilali, ISOC Morocco.
Toshiro Tachibana, ISOC Japan chapter.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Tomohiro Fusaki from ISOC Japan chapter.
My name is Peng Wong from Internet Society Hong Kong.
Aja Watara, ISOC Burkina Faso.
Siaso Valiani, Pacific chapter, based in Fiji.
Gawalakau of Pacific chapter.
Wolf Ludwig, ISOC chapter Switzerland.
My name is Adrian Caravaggio, Argentina chapter.
And Kevin Kramer with the ISOC staff, Reston, Virginia.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. And it's nice to see you in Canada. And as we say in Canada, where there's some hockey fans, I will pass the puck to my coach-in-chief, Walda.
I think that's an exaggeration, but thank you. I just wanted to add a few things. There's one person that we missed, and there are two I want to actually have stand up because they are brand new on the staff, and you will be hearing their names, and I want you to be able to talk with them afterwards tonight. The one who's not been introduced is our videographer, who is Paul Brigner, who is actually is actually the director of the North American Bureau. This is a hobby, but I think it goes way beyond a hobby now. For those of you, for those of you in North America, you will be aware that he has been doing what are called video hangout sessions, where you've been getting to know each of the members of the staff and the other community and talking to each other. So I wanted to make sure we recognized him. I also have joined the ISOC staff and my particular group, Sophie Maddens, who, if you will stand up, Sophie, is the new Senior Director for Global Services, and she is going to be, and already is, leading our our internationalization, our regional activities. So she's going to be somebody that you probably hear about and meet many times. And then C. Lynn McNair. Lynn, if you would stand up. This is her second day. So she's still in her honeymoon period, but that's right. And she is going to be responsible for the groups who bring in new organization members, but also generate the revenue that we need to keep everything operating and running. And because one more person, she's not been to one of these meetings, but you may know her already. If Terrell Cowison would stand up. Terrell is our Senior Director for Internet Leadership. You are aware of the leadership activities. There are e-education courses. There's an awful lot her group is doing that I think would be of interest to a number of you. So there are many other staff people here, as you've seen, but these are the new faces for you. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me take that opportunity to introduce them.
Well, I think they deserve a welcome applause. I also see a young man with red glasses. I've never seen him around, but maybe he would like to introduce himself.
Red glasses, that's maybe me. Sébastien Bachollet, ISOC France, ISOC Peru, ISOC Cameroon, ISOC San Francisco Bay Area, ISOC Australia, and I guess Chennai. And well, it's the only one I have the reason to be here because I am board member of the Chennai chapter. That's it, and board member of ICANN if you want to know what I'm doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, young man. So now I would like to playing the hockey game. Now she gave me back the puck, and I would like to teach Eva a little bit how we play hockey. So it's your say now.
Merci, Louis. So turning to English, which is a more comfortable language for me than French. I think, Louis, that you know that we have a couple of good Swedes playing in the North American hockey teams. So I think we know hockey in Sweden too.
You want me to give their names?
No. I think we should stick to discuss internet and ISOC issues here and leave the hockey to... We can chat about that afterwards. So I'm very, very happy to see all the chapters here. I'm also very, very delighted to get a face to many of the names that I've seen on the chapter's mailing list. I've followed the chapter mailing list. I read all what is said there. But I see, you know, when you get a name and then now you get a face, I appreciate that. I'm also delighted to say that I have two of my current trustee colleagues with me. We have Alain Anna on the bridge, and we have Rudi on the end of this table here. And I'm also very, very happy to see one of my trustee colleagues that was on the board of trustees when I joined the board, still following what we are doing. Alejandro, I know that you enjoy ladies, but I'm honoring you right now.
How you know that?
I'm a totally loyal husband, but I definitely have one preferred opposite sex.
I know that. I'm joking with you. So it's good to see, Alejandro, that you are still following what we are doing, even though you have left the board of trustees and you're here. So I'm delighted to see that. So I'm welcoming you all, and I hope that we will get good discussions during the session we have here tonight. So I leave the puck back to Louis. Merci.
Thank you, Madam the Chair of the Board. Now, I think that I will ask Rudi to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to thank all the chapters that have decided to, during the elections for the Board of Trustees, to vote for me. And I know that there is a lot of expectation coming from chapters, in the sense that they want to have a voice in the board. It's not going to be that easy. As a board member, you have to do a task as a board member, whatever origin you have. But at the end, I cannot stop and hide my heart of a chapter leader. And I want to try to bring up the feelings that are living along the chapters. I think that it's important that in a multi-stakeholder system, even chapters are part of this multi-stakeholder mechanism. And I think that in the coming 3 years, 2.5, because we have already a few months ago, that I will try to help in the board to realize what we have on the plate. And that also seems to be more difficult than what you see from outside. That is something that surprised me. When you look at the Board of Trustees meetings, you look at the minutes, it seems quite simple and small in duty, but at the end, it took me a while before I got the rhythm of following the mailing list only, and to follow all the reports that you have to handle. And it's amazing what happens at the top level of our organization. I think it's interesting to know that even if the chapters don't see much happening, well, a lot of work is done above. And I hope that I can fill my duty as you are all expecting. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call on me. I'm not saying that I'm going to answer, but I will try to keep track of your question and bring it up when the opportunity will give me the chance to do. So thank you.
So if Rudi doesn't answer your questions, please feel to ask me why Rudi is not answering.
Thank you, Rudi. Without any delay, I would like to now introduce Mr. Ted Mooney. He's going to be a facilitator for our discussion tonight. Ted, please.
Thank you very much, Louis. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's great to see how many people participate. What I think many of you have seen in the last few weeks is that we're trying to accommodate a lot of the suggestions of chapters to make this meeting as meaningful as possible. So what we've started with a certain amount of help from my good colleague here, Jacek Gajewski, is we've solicited from chapter leaders and from members a number of what topics do you want to cover at this meeting, understanding that we've got a limited amount of time. And my experience has been that we always end up short. We never quite discuss all the things that we want to in the depth that we would like to. So we're going to try this particular format this evening, which is that we have compiled from you all of the lists of the topics that you want to discuss, and we have taken those 3 topics that seemed to have the most resonance, the highest number of people requesting that we discuss these. That's how we've come about with the topics that you'll see up here, the 3 topics that we want to devote probably 25 minutes to each one. My role here is not to do... Have we got someone else coming online? Well, but that does bring up the point that we certainly want to have participation from everybody, not just those around this table and sitting in the room, but also from all of those participating remotely on these topics. And so what I'm going to do is just introduce the first topic and ask people then to participate and at least start off with what they believe this question means to them. So the first topic that we had a number of people respond to was how are chapters enabled to be more active on specific topics that are local and may not be those that are prioritized by the Internet Society's strategic plan. So for example, there could be local interests of, I know that, for example, Rudi has worked a lot with children in the internet. Things that are specific to chapters and different projects that they want to pursue. How are they enabled to pursue them? What are the actions they need to take? And how do we stay coordinated to be sure that these projects and activities are in parallel with what the ISOC mission and values are, without, say, going, as some friends of mine have said, perpendicular to the ISOC mission. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to any discussion from chapters who are particularly interested in this, any members who are looking at projects that we have not necessarily prioritized from the strategic plan, but are of keen interest to you locally. So who would volunteer to go first? Is it true that no one really actually, we thought about this? Jacek?
There are authors of this proposal on it here, so I think they had something in mind. That?
Yes, Rudi.
Yeah, well, I remember that I have brought up this question to this list, and I think that there is a need of working closely together among chapters, not at the highest level, but trying to find a way of, and I'm a little bit referring to the speech that Fadi has been giving yesterday, where it is clear that he wants to have a closer collaboration at all levels of the structure, and if possible, cross-community working together. My idea was that it would be good if we could organize some working groups or interest groups on specific topics, and we don't need structures for that. No leaders, no chairs, just a few chapter leaders or a few chapter members that are willing to work on a topic together. And I'm just taking, for example, the European ethno situation, where we have been closely working together without having formal structures. And that should be done together with the regional bureau directors and some policy staff. As we see that in many chapters and in many countries, what is a global policy is not always deployable at regional and local level. However, the chapter has to find a way to discuss with local government, regional government, on the issues that are of concern of that government. And that's the way how to reach out as a chapter to your community. And I think that that could be a sample of initiating a work where we have a triangle, being chapter members, the regional bureau directors, and policy staff. I think that could be a basic, but I want to have the appreciation and remarks and comments from my colleague chapters.
Could I ask a clarifying question, Rudi? Are you speaking specifically about those kinds of activities that are not part of the strategic plan of ISOC, or are you talking about other things that may, in fact, be part of our objectives and priorities?
Well, I think you have both situations. You have probably projects that pop up, just like, for instance, the sample that I brought up in Mexico in 2009 already is we have in Belgium the Internet Ombudsman running that brings us every week 2 to 3 members, new members, just because we are listening to what the problems that they have. We are listening here and we learn something. That's also an activity that we can share among other chapters and has less to do with the global strategy. On the other hand, you have the IGF meetings, you have the wicked, you have the ethno situation, you have things that are popping up on which we have Markus bringing up a policy strategy that is a global aspect, but we have also the local community that often has other desires. And that's where the chapter should try to fit in and bring this up first to the community, but then secondly, through, let's say, the interest group or the working group, bring this up to the highest level in ISOC 2 to realign some policies so that you can say, okay, this is our global policy, but in that region, that could be interesting, in that region could be interesting. And that's, I think, and I'm almost sure, I'm not only thinking, I'm sure, that that is the job, that is the mission of a chapter. Bringing up issues that are related to your region, to your local community.
Glenn?
Thank you so much. Rudi, I entirely agree with you. In our case, in the Canadian example, and Louis and Monique can agree with us, we heard from the Minister, Clement, Honorable Clement, spoke today where he talked about accessibility and the digital divide, which was an absolute joke because they've annihilated something called the CAP program, Community Access Program. So, you know, here's a clear example where ISOC Canada could have stood up and said, you're a liar. Maybe that's not parliamentary speech, but maybe we should have said he fibbed. We have a responsibility to our community. We have a responsibility to reach out and basically represent those that don't have a voice. We have an obligation, and I remember taping a session with Rudi and a good friend of ours, Garth Bruin, who is passionate about the issue of fraud and spamming and things, and he was attacked, viciously attacked, for the fact that he was saying the truth. And you know, we know how Rudi has worked extremely hard on trying to talk about the issues. So I would say that I would like to suggest one thing. We've been, and my associate across the table here, Olivier and Sébastien and others here, we've done short little videos, and I'm just going on the record that I'm more than happy to do 1 to 2 minute short little videos to talk about ISOC and why ISOC is available. I have lots of equipment here the whole week. Please lean on me. I'm more than happy to do it for you. So if there's something that any of it you want to talk about, and as long as it's a very short little video, it's open source, I'll give it to you so that you can share it with your members. Thank you.
Chapter Information Ukraine, I believe.
Yes, thank you very much, Oksana Pryhodko. I would like also to support Rudi's statement. For example, if Ukrainian chapter will focus only on local problems, our chapter will be dead. But if we will focus on our regional problems, for example, internet governance terminology in Russian, in Ukraine, Ukrainian language is our national language, but Russian language is extremely important for all post-Soviet culture, and that is why we support Russian speaking terminology and not that terminology provided by, for example, contracted translators, but the terminology which is formatting due to live discussion. Thank you.
Alejandro.
So probably what we need to talk here is more the dynamics than than anything that's an organizational aspect, because I think that the structures are there, the chapters are there. I think we have found a lot of support in previous administrations of the chapter management that will continue to be there, and certainly, I mean, it's up to us as chapters to complain if it doesn't work and to propose ways to not nostalgically, look back to Anne Lord, but also, pick up the strands of the work that she did. But we have a core responsibility here as chapters. I mean, there's no need for structures to facilitate working together if we're not starting the work. I think that we have to be very concrete about that. And what I sense in especially what Rudi has said is something that's really valuable, which is to recognize that chapter work is very different from staff work in its continuity. We are volunteers leading or trying to bring together other volunteers. We are bumped around sometimes by our own maybe lack of discipline and our own internal problems, but also because we're trying to see what way the wind blows in our countries politically. There's periods where we should be doing something, and it's very risky to do it politically. It can actually finish with a chapter if we are seen aligned with a political party. That's one common strand I found in many conversations. So, and other times, day jobs take the better part of us. So, chapter work comes in pulses most usually. We have some continuity, but the big efforts come in pulses. So we have things like a very good idea put forward by Tommy Kartavi, which is an excellent idea for chapter collaboration. It was well thought out in that the work actually is decentralized and distributed. But still, if it doesn't happen that on a given day, 5 of us are there with some chapter members of our own ready to start it, it doesn't start. And this is not something that staff is going to fix for us. If staff doesn't help, it's going to be very hard to fix it. But if it's not something that staff is going to fix for us, if we want something like the observatory, for example, to become a stable, normal project supported by staff, we have to find a structure where the chapter's work still makes sense. This leads me to another larger consideration, which I mentioned already on Sunday, very partially, which is also, we're going to have a very hard time as we grow in finding a way for staff to work as they do very well. There's extraordinary staff doing extraordinary work, for example, with WICIT, with the IGF, with this continuing string of stuff that the ITU is doing with WTPF. There's no surprises there. It's all planned in advance. So they're very professional about it, and we have to find a way where the volunteer work can still fit. Because otherwise it's the rational thing for ISOC as management to do and for us as chapters to support would be let the pros do the pro work in a pro way with a pro timing, and we read the newsletter. That's not the right thing. So we have to find ways that stimulate, incentivate, attract the chapter work, and we have to rotate themes and subjects and issues, because some of us are focused on WICIT and interacting with the ministries and reading the global papers and then telling our ministers they shouldn't support something that they don't even know about yet. And when they find out about the ethno proposal, to use that example, it will be because in WICIT, the phone company in the country is actually supporting ethno. So, other people are after other things. And we have also to make sure that we don't drown them out with the specific today's policy or this year's policy discussion. So I think we have to find also, this discussion must not be a chapter to staff conversation. It also has to be a chapters to chapters discussion. How do we work more horizontally? But that's us. That's, I'll stop there.
Alejandro, thank you for that. Are there others who would like to? We have Victor and Cintra and Jacek, and I want to make sure. Are there any hands up on the remote?
Not yet.
All right. All right, and Finland. Okay, so we'll start with Victor, Cintra, Finland, and then Jacek. Victor?
Yes, thank you, Ted. My name is Victor Ndonnang. For the records, I'm from Cameroon chapter. So I choose this topic because, as all of us know, ISOC have a strategic objective that sometimes it's not always what is the really need of chapters. And I select this topic because I think it is important for chapter to, I can take the case of the community ground program, which project from chapter has to fix the strategic plan or defined by the global strategic plan of ISOC, and sometimes is a real problem that we have a topic that really relevant for our local community, and the chapter can focus on that topic with the support of ISOC because it's not in line with the global strategic objective of ISOC during the specific period. So that's why I think this point have to be discussed, and ISOC have to listen from chapter, maybe let regional bureau define, talk with chapter locally and say, okay, this is what, not say telling to chapter, this is what we think, we have to focus on it, and listen to chapter and say, okay, what do you need and how can we help you achieve that locally. So thank you.
Cintra?
Thank you. This point follows a bit from Alejandro's intervention. Our Trinidad and Tobago chapter has initiated talks with the Puerto Rico chapter in setting up Caribbean, or at least encouraging Caribbean chapters, because we recognize that this is a huge gap in terms of representation. That being said, we do have, an ISOC Caribbean regional manager that we will be engaging with soon. But as chapters, there's only so much we can do. We are constrained in terms of funding, manpower, all those issues. So definitely we will be leaning on ISOC International to provide that support, to really have those voices be heard. The other point I want to make is that while I do think the mailing lists are powerful, we do have quite a range of other social media that we can look at to really keep the discussions going and more interactive. We see this week ICANN has rolled out My ICANN. Maybe there are things we can learn from that portal that can be borrowed. The last thing I want to say is I do think that as a chapter, we do reach out to kids and young people. I know the NGL program has been doing a lot in this area, but I do think that ISOC International maybe needs to cater to youth specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Cintra. Uriah? Did I pronounce that correctly? Oh, close, anyway.
Yeah, thank you. The ISOC Finland has worked pretty hard to become known and recognized as a party to be consulted with by the regulator, by the ministries of communication or ministries of foreign affairs, and even by the committees in the parliament on questions that relate to the internet and communication policy in general. And once you get on those lists, you stay there as long as you are perceived to bringing valuable input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I would like to particularly reach out to those who are joining us remotely. If you have anything, and you can communicate directly on the chat, and Jacek will be happy to read that out. And I also ask our participants over in the gallery, not necessarily right around the table. We have a microphone at a stand that we'd love to hear from you if you have more comments on this issue. one of the things that strikes me, listening to Cintra in particular, is that what might be useful, something we could assist with, and it is just an idea, is a way for other chapters to know what each of you are working on. For example, I know in Cintra's case, she's asked for more outreach for youth, and while that has not necessarily been a strong part of the ISOC Central Strategic Plan, nonetheless, it is an issue that many chapters are following with projects and programs that would be very helpful in helping you understand the challenges that they have faced there and perhaps working with you. So I would throw that out as something that is a way that we might be able to assist each other in cataloging the various programs and projects. So I have two hands up. First, Jolie will be second, first, and third will be Shiva. Yes, you're first.
And hello?
Yes, hello. Who's talking, please?
Yeah, this is Alain. I have my hands on, please.
Alain, if we could, we will put you then fourth in the queue at this point, and I will call on you. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted. This is Olga from Argentina. You're mentioning a very relevant issue, and for example, in our chapter, we have done some projects that have been leveraged by other chapters. For example, we did, thanks to a community grant award, we worked on a book about IPv6, it's named IPv6 for All in Spanish, and then thanks to the cooperation of the Catalonia chapter, we translated into Catalan, and after that, several other languages. I'm not sure if all the chapters are aware of that, because we could leverage much more, translate it into more languages. Now we have a webpage which is called Mapa de Internet that also was prepared through a community grant award, that it's for the moment in Spanish and gathers all the information about internet with focus in Latin America, but also global information and by countries. What we tried, but perhaps we didn't have the time or the momentum, it was to cooperate among the chapters in the region to put updated information. So the idea is to go and update the webpage through social networking and perhaps working with other chapters. If there would be a list or something like a matrix with all these initiatives that would be enhanced by the cooperation of other chapters, that would be great, because we have done that, but in a face-to-face basis of our friendship to some of the chapters and in some of these meetings. But if we could have some of a map of nice things to cooperate with, that could be good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, Jolie, you get to go next.
How about sound? You can hear me? I don't hear you, but I'm going to keep talking. Well, first thing, out of ISOC Romania, we did have an initiative to do a buddy press site, which we experimented with, which never seemed to catch on. The problem was it didn't have email integration. Recently, I've been working in other groups where we've been using things like Basecamp that does have email integration, so some kind of platform like that might work on individual projects. On the ITU thing, Sally's list works great, and one other that she's using Scoopit as an observatory. And
Jolie, this is Ted. It's hard to hear you. Perhaps if you could speak a little bit more slowly, and we're going to try and clean up the sound a bit here. If there's anything you can do on your end to help the clarity.
Is that better?
That's better. And speak a little bit more slowly, please.
Okay. First, I'll mention that ISOC Romania did a buddy press project, I forget, which didn't really catch on. In part, I thought that why it didn't catch on was it wasn't well integrated with email. I'm cutting my audio from you so I don't get an echo. And recently I've been working on projects that use a thing like Basecamp, which is a combined web and email interface. And, you know, something like that can work well on individual projects. I think that the ITU group that Sally has is working well. And I noticed that she's using Scoopit as a kind of observatorium. And the good thing about that is that has RSS. We're able to include that on the chapter website as she pulls stuff up. I think that we should work on this stuff. I think the correct place to work on it would be the existing com dev list that we have where we work on communications. Okay, I'm very happy to see that we've now got new mailing lists for public policy and copyright. And you know, and look forward to working with those groups. And I will repeat what Walda was saying about whole thing of the weekly hangouts that we've been having on North America, that we should be having topic-based hangouts on a regular basis as well, with someone making a lead. I think that would be a good way to work. Thank you.
Thanks, Jolie. I'm going to attempt to summarize quickly, which is essentially that there are, in fact, a number of mechanisms in some fashion or another that we are not yet fully taking advantage of in either the chapter community nor necessarily as staff in helping learn about these particular opportunities. There are some things going on. There are continuing to grow lists around certain topics. The Romanian chapter has, in fact, started a website, an opportunity to collaborate that many chapters may not know about, and has been focused primarily for European chapters. So if I take your point, then there are a number of opportunities and potentially initiatives that chapters need to be aware of, because we can, in fact, and chapter leaders can, in fact, do more to speak to each other on these various issues through those mechanisms. Part of our job in chapter support is to make those better known to all of you and how to be able to participate in them. So I hope I've done you justice there, Jolie, and I'm going to move on. Shiva has had his hand up. Shiva?
Yeah. Most of the ideas expressed in this meeting is about chapters working with chapters working with staff. It's about collaboration, it's about communication. And coincidentally, just before the meeting, Ted Mooney was talking about, was asking me about one of the projects that some of us worked on. They're called the SPEAR project. So he showed some interest in reviving that project, and it is so relevant in the context of all that we have been discussing. I don't know if the concept of the project is well understood. It is a project which is about networking, which is about communication, which is about collaboration, and it could break the barriers. It could connect chapters across barriers. It could connect chapters with staff without barriers, and it could be used as a tool to make one chapter aware of what another chapter is doing. It could be used as a tool to make chapters aware of each chapter's expertise, and it is a project that some of us could work on, particularly Olivier, who had done some graphical representation of IPv6 performance, and so we can build it up and use it as a communication networking tool. And it's much more than a networking tool. It could solve many of our problems. I think we should take it up, Ted.
Thank you, Shiva. Alain, you're on remote, and if you would please try to mute your speakers to minimize the feedback, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello?
We hear you.
Yes, okay. I want to contribute to the first one. I think talk about specific topics which are not part of ISOC strategic plan. I see local topics and chapters I stand in position to deal with without necessarily engaging in the local politics. And it's very important for chapters to make their voice heard in the local situation, the global ISOC umbrella, and trying to find a way to give the message, engaging in the local politics, engaging necessarily in the local politics. On the regional level, I think it benefits from having many chapters from the region together to collaborate, to discuss, share ideas, and have and contribute. And so, seeing at the regional level, to look at the specific regional issue. I think in our region, for Africa region, and I think people are aware that the community is working on a new strategic plan, ICANN strategic plan for the region. So I think it's a topic where all the chapters in our region participate and could participate more, engaging their members and the opportunity through the chapters to get the topic, the idea, the instruction to reach the end users. And when you reach the global level, it's more because we have all the chapters and all the community around the chapters. So this is how I see how enabling the chapters to be more active outside ISOC strategic priorities and plan to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alain. I'm not sure we heard all of that, but I think we did hear the major points about the activity of chapters, about both local and regional issues, and we really appreciate that. I want to bring this particular part of the discussion to an end. There are lots of action items I think that each of us can think about. There's one more comment still on the table, and I'd like to recognize Alejandro before we move on to the next topic.
Thank you. Very briefly, I think that what Olga Cavalli just mentioned puts the finger on the wound. We have the project of internet cartography that she set up with a community grant is a project that's natural, that is designed to be finished only through collaboration. It cannot be done by the chapter, the Argentina chapter alone. It would require a research department to first set it up and then to continue keeping the information up to date. Most of the information is either antiquated or not there or whatever. But it won't happen unless you call for the collaboration. If you start a collaborative project, a project that can only be finished by collaboration, and wait till you have filled in the first information to describe it to the chapters, it's not going to happen. If it's a collaborative project, I think that we should set it up collaboratively. It's fantastic that you take the lead. I mean, there will be no one complaining about taking the lead. But if there's not a repeated call for people to add their data and so forth, and I don't mean this about this in particular, but it's, you know, if we don't set our projects collaboratively, then we won't have the collaboration.
That's an extremely good point, to build collaboration in from the very beginning of our planning. Thank you very much, Alejandro. Thank you for everybody who participated in this. What we want to do is something we have not necessarily done in the past is, as some of you have noted, I've taken a few notes. We're going to try and make sure that there are some key points taken away from each of these discussions and circulated to everybody so that you have the opportunity not only to comment but to see what action items you in particular can take. Not just what staff can take, but what all of us as chapters can take on ourselves and the way we can discuss these projects with each other. One thing I will do before we move on to the next topic is make a plug for the chapter survey, which will be coming out in the next month. All of you will be receiving a copy of it, and I'm encouraging you all right now, please complete that survey. What it will do, it will help chapter support in particular, but the Internet Society as a whole, to help allocate resources to those key issues that are important to you. So thanks very much. Look for that in the not too distant future. I'd like to move the topic on now to something that's, I think, near and dear to everybody's heart, and that's the wicket. And in particular, the questions that were raised by chapters when we asked what you all wanted to discuss, it revolved around not so much what we do between now and December, but very much what do we do after December. And so what I'd like to do is open it up to people who have been thinking about this. I know that a lot of people in this room have been thinking about it, including a number of staff people. What are the next steps? I would also caution us that we do not yet know the outcome of the wicket as much as we think we may. And so it has a potential for how we plan and how we allocate resources in 2013. So I'd like to open the floor with comments from Markus. Markus?
Thank you, Ted, and let me state at the outset that I think we had a very good cooperation with chapters all the world over in the run-up to Wicked, and it's not over yet. There's still a few weeks left, and the role of chapters is extremely important. We want them to be the trusted source of information of their governments. I think Yurio made a good point. Once they're established, they're the natural interlocutors. The government turns to chapters, parliaments, whatever. I remember we started inviting regulators to IETF meetings, and it was, I think, in Paris we had regulators from Cameroon, and they said they would like to get in touch with the chapter, and hey, we introduced them to Victor, and Victor now is their trusted source of information on internet issues. I think that's a tremendous success, a tremendous impact. So, this is great work, and Wicked, yes, will be over. We don't know yet the outcome, but we will know the story will continue. There are other meetings around the corner. There will be the WTPF in May next year. Then there will be WSIS plus 10. There will be another plenipot. And this is part of a bigger picture. There are many governments that are not particularly comfortable with the internet. And in a way, it is understandable. The internet is a challenging technology, to put it mildly. It challenges established business models, but it also challenges the authority of governments. And it challenges the international system as it is, which is based on national sovereignty, surrounded by national borders. And the internet is a borderless technology. So it is to be expected that governments are not particularly comfortable with that. And then the internet way of doing things, it's an informal, bottom-up collaboration. Nobody is really in charge. This is not the way governments are used to cooperation, where there's usually a clear pyramid with somebody on the top who is in charge. With the internet, nobody's in charge. And then, in the ITF, people have decision-making based on humming. Try to explain that to a government official. That's not the way they do business. So, in all objectivity, we have to have understanding that governments find it difficult to relate to that. And there, the role of chapters can be very, very helpful in helping to explain. And again, the ITF meeting in Vancouver, there was a regulator from Senegal, the first time he was at an IETF meeting, and he was absolutely enthusiastic. He said, this is the way we should work nowadays in the age of the internet. So you have to reach out, you have to make a step towards them. make them understand how it works. And people who may have been hostile actually can turn out to be your enemies. But again, the world of governments is much easier for a government representative. You get the invitations to a meeting, you go to your superior, he approves the travel, then you go to the meeting, there is a nameplate, it says Cameroon or Sweden or Belgium, you sit behind it, and you put up your flag, you can say whatever you like, and people listen politely, and nobody shouts, it's very comfortable, whereas in the internet world, there's no hierarchy, and the hierarchy is based on competence, and it is different, let's face it. And there, I think, in the years ahead, it will not diminish the pressure. The internet has become more and more important. When we had the World Summit on the Information Society, we celebrated the first billion on the internet. Now we have 2 billions on the internet. There are more billions to come, and the more people there are on the internet increases the importance, it increases the economic weight, and increases the internet, the interest of governments. And governments have a natural tendency, a natural wish to be in charge and to control, and not necessarily for evil purposes. But then there are, of course, also purposes some governments have, which we would not associate with, that is basically also content control, to keep away content they don't like. We have seen in recent weeks the discussions about this YouTube video on the Prophet Muhammad, and there are increasing pressures on content control, and it is important to recognize these tensions, but also to be open about it and to talk about it. And we are not engaged in issues of content control that is in a way beyond our remit, but we do stand for a free and open internet, and we have made it clear time and again that we think blocking of content is not part of the nature of the internet, and it is actually, technologically speaking, also bad for the internet. But we need to have these discussions, and there are clearly tendencies to have an internet that is based on national borders. That would be very nicely in line with the way the international system works, but it's not in line with the way the internet works. And there, I think we have much work outlined for many years to come. But I think chapters really can play an extremely important role as the trusted interlocutors of their governments. But it is a lot of hard work.
Thank you very much for that. Grigory.
Thank you very much. Let me impress that I not agree that government is a one person. Government is lot of persons necessary to work with them, and if we are looking for the next steps, necessary to analyze what we have done for this WCIT. If you give me 3 or 4 minutes, I'll tell you what I have done in our country. It's, I think, very interesting. It's a practical work. I think it's possible to do in any other country. It took 3.5 months to prepare our government for WCIT. And now, I'm sure, of course, I'm sure, because we have sent our proposals for WCIT from the Ministry of Transport and Communications as an official position. And this official position is reflecting ISOC approach to the internet governance. But for that, first of all, I'll tell you a very short story. ITU Council Working Group report was prepared at June 24. We have received this report at June 27. Ministry of Transport and Communications sent this report to Internet Society of Armenia and asked for advice. What shall we do with this report? Maybe you know, this report is very large. ISOC Armenia have prepared his recommendations, and we have removed all internet-related proposals from ITRs. But it means that if we have removed this proposal for internet governance, we must suggest something additional. And we suggest internet policy which will be acceptable by Armenian government. We have prepared this policy and sent these two documents, our proposals and internet policy, not to the government but to all NGOs in Armenia. After 15 days, we received from them their feedback. And after receiving this feedback, we have sent our proposals to the Ministry of Transport and Communications. They have distributed this document, which came from society, among ministries. And after 15 days, they also have received their feedbacks from governmental organizations. After that, they had prepared position of country on ITR. It took 2 months because, you know, it's a bureaucracy. After 2 months, our ministry had a normal position, which is, I can say, is normal and strong position that we are against government and control on the internet. We don't accept this new definition that telecommunication is not only receiving and sending signals but also processing signals. So a lot of important points which we can find in new ITR proposals. And when in September we had this RCC is regional ITU organization meeting in Yerevan, 17 and 18 of September. By the way, Mr. Toure was also have participated in this meeting. We had this position, and this position was prepared not only from governments, but this position was prepared after public consultations with society. And each governmental organization was informed about this problem.
So, Grigori, if I could ask, what are the takeaways for the rest of us here? What are the secrets to success? I think someone in the Ukraine...
First of all, necessary to inform everybody about this problem. And of course, the language of ITU, ITRs is very hard. Necessary to tell people what is it, to describe, to call press conferences, to tell that, guys, this is the problem. And if you speak in normal language, it means that they want to take control on the internet. And mass media is with us. They don't want to have control on them, you know.
I understand. Very few of us want control on us, do we? There was a comment from our chapter in formation in the Ukraine.
Yes, thank you very much. We really did a lot of job sending a lot of formal informational requests to all our Ukrainian constituency, governmental constituency, which has to be respond for IG policy. We received only responses that we have no information about Ukrainian position on this issue. And the only one answer I received, it was from Grigory, because Ukrainian representative in Armenia said that Ukraine is against Russian proposition on internet governance. Yes, but we did not receive any official confirmation of this position. That is my question. You are asking about after Dubai, but we have sometimes before. And we really need a lot of job before.
So while I could defer to my distinguished colleague, Markus Kummer, who has been extremely active, as his entire team, on the preparations for the wicket, I think one of the great reasons that you want to complete the chapter formation process is so that you can, in fact, participate in all the wonderful things, all the important things that have been going on for the last year, quite honestly, on the wicket. And while they're too numerous to name individually now, I want to assure you that there has been a lot of work, and a lot of it by people in this room as well. And hopefully there'll be an opportunity very soon for you to share more and more of that, so that you can be successful in Ukraine as well. Olivier.
Thank you very much, Ted. Olivier from the UK England chapter. I think that several chapters have actually started and pursued some processes where they spoke to their governments and engaged in local multi-stakeholder processes to counsel on the reply that their government, or the engagement that their government would have at WCIT. I note the fact there is a question there, what happens afterwards? And it is true, the 2 or 3 weeks, some people say it might take 4 weeks, who knows. But the 2 weeks originally, and 2 weeks plus X number of days if some people remain behind, will yield something which nobody knows. However, this is not the end. There are a lot of things afterwards, and I wondered whether Markus or any of you could share what's happening afterwards. What should we get prepared for, and how chapters could get prepared post WCIT?
So that isn't my particular realm of expertise. I'd defer to someone else on staff who would care to answer. Do you want to hear Stepan's question? So hold that, and we still have to answer it. And Stefan?
Okay, thank you. First of all, very sorry to be so late, but I have to leave tomorrow, and so I had to complete some activities in the GAC. And tomorrow I'm going back to Italy because I'm going to attend the IGF Italy 2012 in Turin. And after the greetings of the local authorities in Turin, there will be an opening session where the start is Constance Bumelaar of ISOC, myself, and after the two of us, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Italy, in preparation of Baku. But I want to speak a little bit about Wicked, because this is the theme now. Then 13 chapters in Europe wrote a letter to Ethno and got a response from Ethno. And now we are planning an answer to that letter, but it's not useful because Ethno simply repeat things and don't understand and don't answer to the questions that we, the chapter, asked to them. And this is a very important session that we are having during the IGF Italy with Ethno, just to try at least to speak of substantial matters instead of listening them repeating always the same disc, let's say. Then I want simply to say that in any case, also for me, it's not so easy. Also, if I am representing the government in different fora, the relation, because going to ITU is not a very transparent organization, and so also there is a lobby within ITU of the telcos, the former monopolist, let's say. So, but it is very important that the chapters may start and discussing things in the substance and defending the internet model, and then of course exchanging experience between us. And sending this letter I was mentioning was something in cooperation, let's say, and in cooperation with chapters and with ISOC, the Coordination European Office. So this is, I think, a good example of what we could do and continue in this line. Thank you.
Thank you, Stepan. I think that's there are lots of examples of work that we can all be doing. I'd like to return, though, to Olivier's question and ask Markus if he would like to talk a little bit about maybe some specifics of thoughts the chapters may be able to contribute as we look post-Wicked.
Yes, thank you. And I would also like to comment on some of the interventions. I think Grigory's comments, that really shows the activity of a chapter that has been at it for many years and is well established and has the act together and really is where we would like chapters to be. To get asked 3 days after the letter is sent by the government for an opinion is actually a tremendous success. I mean, this is really, and then the way it was handled, incorporating all non-governmental actors in the country to provide input, you can't do better than that. And the exchange of information, the sharing of best practices among the chapters, of course, is extremely useful, may give others ideas, but we also have to realize that the realities in each country may be somewhat different. It may not be that easy in other countries, or where chapters are information, they need to convince governments first that they are their trusted interlocutor. But this is extremely helpful. And on Stefano's comments, this can actually be quite delicate, on writing letters, on combined letters, and whether or not to answer or not. We discussed, should we react to Ethno's answer to our position paper, and we came to the conclusion, no. The quality of their reaction was so bad, we didn't want to lower ourselves to their level. And if the chapters now if they decided to send a report, that could also be extremely delicate, because our ISOC has a kind of observer status in the European organization. We are participating in the negotiations, and we don't want to be seen as having a letter that could be counterproductive for their position. And we have to be aware, for the outside world, it is difficult to make a distinction what is a chapter and what is ISOC staff. So it is important to be in consultations, whatever we do, and that we speak also with one voice. And there may be issues of content, there may be issues of tactics, but my main plea is it is important that we coordinate on this, and we are in constant touch on this. And to Olivier's question, I mean, I tried at a very high level to say, what is next? And what is next is, once Wicked is over, there will be the World Telecommunication Policy Forum, the WTPF, that will be in May in Geneva. That is not a treaty conference, that is non-binding, but they come up with opinions, and the opinions find their way into resolutions at the plenipot, and it will have invariably an impact, and it will also, then there's a process of the WSIS plus 10, where the entire discussions will again take place on essentially who should be in charge with the internet. And some governments find it would be much better if the internet were run by an intergovernmental UN agency, because that's the way the world is run. So it will go on. And there again, we would like to the chapters to continue to do their tremendous work and stay in touch with their governments and say, hey, this paper, no, this is bad. We think it's distorting the realities. And there were proposals up at the last PRET meeting for the WTPF for a secure internet by Saudi Arabia. When you look at it, it sounds like a censored internet. It's definitely not the internet we want. And their chapters can be helpful in advising their governments.
Thanks. I know that Stefano wants to respond, but before you do, we have Alejandro in the queue, and I'll ask you both to be somewhat brief, only because it's the last topic we're going to be able to cover. We won't even be able to get to our last one. So I just wanted to hold your thought. We will get back to you, and please, Alejandro.
The action that we undertake in the chapters has already benefited from exchanges of opinions, thoughts, and knowledge among chapters and with staff. For us in ISOC Mexico, one thing that we find would be very useful, we actually think it's necessary, is to close the feedback loop by getting feedback from staff or from others in this organization who actually attend the meetings. For example, in our case, the CITEL meetings. I guess in Europe and Africa, it's different regional and other meetings where our authorities go, and to get feedback whether we are actually having an impact. And with that information, we can adjust our tactics, be more pushy, more informative, more incisive, leave them alone, etc. But closing that feedback loop would be an extremely valuable function. Otherwise, we are in our own world.
Okay, very, very short. The idea was to answer to this letter of Ethno before the end of Istanbul CEPT meeting, where these problems are discussed. We interacted with the European coordination with Frederick Donk. But the opinion of the chapters has been that, okay, we listen to the policy making in the headquarters, let's say, but we as the chapters also, we would like to be maybe less diplomatic in some cases, but more going to the real problem. So, and this is what was a voice among the chapters in the last mail today afternoon. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Stepan. So before we close out, I know that we're going to lose our feed very soon. I'd like to ask Lynn if she'd like to address some of these. Thank you, Lynn.
No, I think with respect to the time, I actually won't address them. I think your comment earlier, Ted, which said we will note what we've heard here tonight and what we think are appropriate actions and get that out will be a really useful thing. And certainly want to thank everybody, as staff knows, I always say, for everything you do for the internet, because that's why we're here, and of course everything you do for ISOC. The reason I actually asked for the floor, was to say to everybody that PIR actually is sponsoring Music Night tonight. But it's actually a special night for them because they just passed some months ago 10 million .org domain names. So it's obviously an important milestone for them. It's important for all of us here in this room, of course, because PIR is a supporting organization of ISOC, which means that their surplus actually comes to ISOC to support ISOC's mission. So it's on the ICANN program. Everybody's invited. I just couldn't actually let it pass without noting their significant accomplishment. And I think we should, be on the record as actually thanking them for everything that they do to run the registry in such a remarkable high quality, high value, adhering to our principles way. I mean, it's greatly appreciated. And then, of course, Music Night started an hour and a half or so ago. It'll be in full swing at this point in time, so if people have the time, they should actually make their way there. Thank you.
So, everybody get out and support PIR Music Night after you leave here. But before you leave here, I'd personally like to thank everybody for their participation, particularly the people remotely who've dialed in. And although we didn't get to potentially some of all of your comments, it's really important that you continue to participate. We really do appreciate that remote participation. To everybody here who's made the journey and made the time to come out here in this evening and spend the time here and not go to Music Night right away, we really appreciate all of that input. As I mentioned earlier, and as Lynn affirmed, we're going to get some notes out about what the topics that were discussed, and hopefully these will be useful. One last thing before we go to the photo. Remember, we have a group photo. Everybody's got to stay for the group photo. The last thing is that this has been somewhat of a change of the format that you all are probably used to. It has been, as I mentioned at the outset, a request of a number of chapters. What I want to continue to do is solicit your feedback into what's working and what isn't in this meeting. So, we didn't get to all 3 topics. We got to 2, but it was a very good, I think, informative and rich discussion. Maybe 3 topics were ambitious, but again, your feedback is much appreciated. So, unless there are, Olivier wants to have the last word too. So I will be happy to allow him that, but after Olivier speaks, everybody, again, thank you, and please let's go to the photo.
I will have the last word.
Our chair should, of course, have the last word.
Thank you, it's Olivier. I just had one question. How many chapters are here tonight? Because I personally have not seen as many ever, and I think we might be breaking a record. I don't know. It's just a wild guess.
It's because I'm chair, Olivier. Come on.
And don't forget, we've got chapters represented remotely as well. So I don't know the number, but we will count it and we will report it. Mr. Chairman.
Well, we've been counting at least 34 profiles, okay? I don't know if it's all chapters, but I suggest that yes. I just want to ask for your collaboration for one thing. Please, our multimedia man tonight.
Yeah. And there is an extra award for those who go to photo. You get a ISOC pin. So right. Everybody knows that you are an ISOC member. Hurrah!
Thank you to our remote Jolly, thank you very much for all your good work as usual.
And Kevin Kramer from
And good night, buenas noches, et bonsoir.